Now, I'm no Joe Gibbs or Blumenech, but I do know something about historical archery. I've been practicing since my mid-teens, and there are a number of things about traditional historical archery in movies that really get my goat. So we're looking at bows here like the traditional longbow or the recurve bow used in movies that are frequently got absolutely wrong. So let's look at my top 5 bugbears about archery in movies. Hi folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria. Now, the number one thing which really gets my goat about historical archery, traditional bows used in movies, is range. So the basic issue I have about bows represented in movies as far as range is concerned is that usually they show the arrows travelling too far. Now, I understand why this is done for cinematic effect and to look impressive on screen, and also largely because they sometimes have large vistas and they want to show the archery being effective over a large part of that landscape. But the simple fact is that most traditional bows shooting forms of war arrow, i.e. relatively heavy arrows, don't usually travel more than about 300 yards or 300 meters. Yes, indeed, there are ranged shots. There are types of bows, Turkish bows, for example, or Persian bows, which can shoot light flight arrows as much as 500 meters. But generally speaking, in war, using war arrows, most archery really starts at about 200 to 300 yards or meters, and this isn't represented very well on screen. And as I say, some bows can shoot up to about 500 meters in extraordinary and specialized circumstances. But in most cases, you don't want to be shooting arrows at this extreme range at armed and armored armies for a number of reasons. The first reason is you're probably going to run out of arrows too soon. So if you start shooting at them too soon, you're going to run out of arrows by the time they get close. And that connects to the second reason, which is that archery is most effective, particularly against armored or semi-armored opponents at close range. So this message is sponsored by Raycon, and summer's in full swing. And so therefore, anything that enables you to get outside, enjoy the open air, morning walks, workouts, whatever, is a good thing. And because Raycon bone conducting headphones sit just outside your ears, they're safe to wear outside and you can still hear everything that's going on around you. With crystal clear sound and they're lightweight, they're fantastic for getting out and about and enjoying the summer. And there's a 20% off deal with them right now. So Raycon's bone conducting headphones use off-ear audio. That is, they conduct the sound through your bones, which leaves your ear holes open, which is really useful, even if you're doing jobs around the house and want to keep an ear out for the children or the pets or whatever. With 13 hours of battery life, and they're IP68 waterproof and dustproof as well. And unlike earbuds, they stay absolutely solidly on your head when you're running around moving, and you can pop them down like that and wear them when you're not actually listening to something. And Raycon's bone conducting headphones also give you the sound quality of premium brands, but at half the cost. So I genuinely use these every day. I use them a lot. I use them when I'm cleaning the kitchen, I use them when I'm having my lunch and I need to keep an ear open for deliveries. So the Raycon bone conducting headphones are a fantastic option for everyday listening. So you can click that link in the description down below, or you can go to buyraycon.com/ScholaBC for viewers of this channel to get 20% off right now. So thanks once again to Raycon for sponsoring this channel. So thanks for sticking with me, and the important part here is range usually is misrepresented in movies. They want to show arrows going too far away and shooting in too high volumes at that distance. You'd save the faster shooting for when they get closer. You might only do harrying shots at distance in most cases. So that's one thing that I think movies get really wrong. Number 2 is armour penetration. I think that armour penetration is grossly misrepresented in all manner of movies and TV shows. So there are a few different elements of this to unpack actually, but one kind of headline here is that plate armour, for the most part, is arrow proof. We've seen this in numerous tests in the Arrows versus Armour series on my friend Todd's channels. And quite simply, plate armour was designed to do this. It was designed to stop things like lances and poleaxes and swords and arrows. But of course, plate armour has gaps, and that's a very important element and something that I think is really poorly represented in movies and TV shows. That is, we often see arrows going through plate armour when they could have just had it go through the gap at the armpit, in the visor slit, or if it's an open face helmet, in the face or the neck where there's an opening, inside of the elbows, backs of the legs, places like these where there are gaps. So plate armour, the actual plates, protect really, really well against armour. Not to say against arrows, not to say that sometimes some arrows can go through some plates, but for the main part, for the big picture, it protects against arrows, and really where arrows would find is gaps. And obviously not everybody is wearing full plate harness. That's another important point, and I think something that should be used a lot more in movies and TV shows is showing the disparity between different types of armour. If you have a body of soldiers being hit with arrows, the people in good armour would not be wounded by those arrows, while the people standing around them, their retinue, who are maybe in brigandines and salots or whatever, or mail, chainmail, and don't have that plate armour, do get wounded by the arrows. And this disparity, and this is something that features majorly in historical accounts, is the difference between the people who have the arrow-proof armour versus the people who don't have the arrow-proof armour. And the last thing that I would love to see more of, and we do actually see a bit of it in Lord of the Rings and a couple of other things, is actually targeting gaps. If someone is wearing really protective armour, whether it's plate or lamella or whatever, the archers specifically targeting the face, as we know Chinese Manchu archers did, for example, or other openings in the armour. And this is a really interesting detail that I think would be great to actually see more of on screen, because it was certainly a bit of historical archery that was very important to the archers. Another thing that lots of people really hate about on-screen archery is holding the string at draw, with the commander going, hold, hold, wait until you see the whites of their eyes. These aren't rifles or muskets, these are bows. You're storing a huge amount of energy, especially if it's a war bow of any kind, in the bowstring while you're holding it at full draw. It's an incredibly stupid thing to do for a number of reasons. Firstly, it's a really bad and stupid thing to do for the archer. You're holding that at full draw while you're getting absolutely exhausted. Gradually your hands creeping forward, your hands shaking, your aim's going to be worse, your power output is going to be worse. What often gets overlooked is your subsequent shots are going to be worse, because you've just used a lot of energy just holding that first shot, and you want to have the energy for subsequent shots. Really bad for the human, you're more likely to do yourself an injury. But the second thing that often gets overlooked is it's bad for the bow. So bows made of traditional materials, pre-fiberglass, pre-carbon, all of this kind of stuff, so made of wood, horn, sinew, they are usually unstrung for long periods of time of storage, because if you leave them strung, they lose power. Moreover, if they're at full draw, the longer you hold him here, the less stretchiness, the less toughness and springiness is left in the bow, because gradually the materials start to permanently, not a lot, but slightly lose some draw weight. And over a long period of time, if you're continually doing this, you could damage the bow. They're not designed to be held at full draw for a long period of time, like a modern Olympic bow is, for example. So it's bad for the human, it's bad for the bow. But overall, there's another, I think, the most important point to make is why? Why would you do it? There's no benefit to it whatsoever, holding it at full draw. The only thing you could say is so you could get an instantaneous release. But honestly, if you've already got your arrow out and nocked, so absolutely be ready and nocked, you're there ready to go. Really, how long does it take if you're here to do that and shoot? Like a second. So why hold it at full draw? You're not gaining anything from it. It's utterly stupid. It's a very annoying trope. We see it in all sorts of movies, and obviously it comes from firearms. We see it in all sorts of movies and TV shows. Movie makers, TV makers, stop it. Please stop doing this. Number 4. ammo supply, or more specifically arrow supply in this case. So quite simply, you can only carry a finite number of arrows, and just like commando movies where they're spraying bullets all around and never reloading their magazines, changing their magazines, and bolt action rifles that mysteriously fire multiple times without operating the bolt action, this is a movie kind of cliche which is also common to bows as well. We see numerous archers in numerous movies ever since the silver screen started, going all the way back to those early silent kind of Robin Hood movies and stuff. We see archers shooting lots of arrows and yet magically almost never running out, and this is obviously a big problem. The reality is that, for example, English longbowmen tended to carry arrows in sheaves of 24. As far as we know, the maximum that they ever carried was around 72 arrows, 3 sheaves. Okay, so 72 arrows. If an enemy is advancing across 200 meters, it takes them 2 to 3 minutes. If you are shooting 12 arrows a minute, then you will shoot them 30 arrows. So you've only, if you've got 72 arrows, you've potentially only got another 42 arrows, and you've expended those in 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, so quite simply, it doesn't take a lot of maths to work out. If you're shooting continuously, then you're going to expend your 72 arrows very quickly. Now, can they be resupplied? Yes, and probably at certain battles like Cressy, where they probably had a Wagenburg or a wagon train kind of fortification, or at Agincourt, where they Henry V seems to have taken huge precautions to make sure that they had vast numbers of arrows. They must have had some kind of continuous resupply. This is very unusual. Generally speaking, archers are carrying the arrows that they have on them. In movies and TV shows, we barely ever see arrows being resupplied to archers. So we have to assume that the archers only have what they have on them. And whether it's a hero like Legolas or Robin Hood, or whether it's an army like in The King or something like this, then if we can only see the archers with those arrows, that's the number of arrows they've got. So ammo resupply, and rather the rate of shooting. So this connects to speed shooting, and people like Lars Anderson, of course, have demonstrated you can shoot arrows very, very quickly if you want to. But to what ends? Firstly, can you do that with a heavy war bow? That's a whole different topic. But secondly, what effect, if you're using lighter bows, would that have on enemy in armour? Probably nothing. But to me, the really most pertinent question is, where are you going to get all the arrows from? If you're shooting them at that rate, you can't resupply them. And once they're shot, they're gone. You're not getting them back. So it's better to save your arrows either for close range, so not start shooting them as quickly as you can at long range where they're going to have the least effect. Save them for close range when indeed some degree of speed shooting might be important, but also aimed shots at vulnerable points if possible. We know that some archers train for this historically. So the whole question around ammo resupply is a very big one. The number of arrows that any archer can carry, whether on foot or mounted, and bear in mind, if you're a mounted archer, you can't be resupplied very easily because you're riding around. So therefore that also connects to rate of fire or rate of shooting, because you don't want to shoot your arrows off like a machine gun, because you're going to run out in no time at all and the battle's going to go for another hour. What are you going to do? Now, number 5 is something that gets often overlooked, I think, by people who haven't studied actual historical accounts of medieval battles. And that is that very often in history, archers were shooting other archers. Now, very often, I think, because there's a degree of storytelling and narrative, and we're so used to seeing recreations of things like the Battle of Agincourt, where it is a group of archers shooting at some other force, whether it's French knights or whether it's Urukai or Romans or whatever. And the reality is that many, many times in history, in fact, I would say most times in history, when archers were shooting at an opponent, it was also archers who were shooting back at them. And if we look at the 100 Years' War, often it was archers shooting at crossbowmen, but sometimes it was archers versus archers. The French Burgundians used archers as well. But moreover, in classical battles, very often one side had lots of archers, the other side had lots of archers. Whether you're looking at India or Persia or parts of Africa, or obviously all over European history. So something I'd like to see more of is archers shooting at other archers. We do see it occasionally. We kind of see it almost in an archery duel format, sometimes between individuals. Some of the Robin Hood films show this. Additionally, we occasionally see it in Lord of the Rings, where archers are shooting at each other, Legolas shooting against kind of goblins or orcs or whatever. But I think we should see this more in a battlefield situation as well. And very often the archery duel, as it's sometimes termed, was a major deciding factor, for example, in the Wars of the Roses, in deciding what happened next, whether they came to close combat or how quickly they came to close combat, because maybe one side had fewer archers, or they were uphill or downhill, or upwind or downwind. And this made a big difference as to which side performed the best in this archery shootout, and that would dictate which side closed to close combat, maybe quicker or maybe later. If your archers were doing well, let them keep shooting. If you run out of arrows, quickly close if the other side's got more arrows. These are all things that made huge differences on battlefields. So these were just the main 5 things that really bother me about how traditional historical archery is portrayed on the movie screen or on historical or fantasy TV shows. There are many other things we could criticise, and I'm sure there are some things which maybe bother you more. Let me know down in the comments, because I'm really interested to know, are there certain things that we see in archery on screen that bother you more? Obviously there's some kind of blooper type things of them holding the string or the arrow in the wrong way, or, you know, just the way the bow's strung. Sometimes we see it strung backwards and weird stuff like that. So there are obviously individual blooper things, but I think generally speaking I've covered the 5 main things that regularly, repeatedly, are things that I would like to either see corrected or rectified when we see historical style archery portrayed in either historical or fantasy movies. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, and obviously thanks once again to the sponsors of this video, Raycon. Check out that link down below. And I have been Matt Easton, I will continue to be, and I'll see you back on the channel really soon. Cheers folks.